America is blowing hot and cold about whether it thinks that Ukraine is important. It's important because China's watching. China will take over Taiwan if Russia gets its way on Ukraine because it knows we are weak. And that is essentially what is on the table today.
Well, the Times reports today how more than 30 private schools have been bought by Chinese investors in the past decade. A senior government source told us China is playing the long game. It's ideological warfare. These children will grow up and be helpful to the Communist Party. Iain Duncan Smith is the former leader of the Conservative Party and co-chair of the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China. Iain, good morning to you.
Good morning.
How significant is this then? Do you think Chinese are buying up some pretty historic private schools in this country?
Well, it's significant insofar as that it follows the fact that they've pretty much taken over most of the Russell Group universities and some of the lesser universities in the UK. That's been a very big project of theirs. Universities across the UK now are heavily indebted to China, which means that quite a lot of what goes on in a university normal in terms of debate, etc., is often quite suppressed. So we found that lots of Chinese embassy staff end up at debates that normally students would have on various subjects, including things like genocide in Xinjiang or the Chinese abuse of religious groups or Tibetans, etc. These things are more under pressure to take place now because China's money is important to these universities. So we see already that process. The taking over of the schools is very much within the same context, which is slowly, bit by bit, these private schools, potentially, mostly private, are the schools that essentially are running out of money, and a huge amount of that is to do with the VAT stuff that's hit them quite recently. So there's much more open to being taken over financially by China. And the security services wanted to put China in the upper tier of the foreign influence registration scheme. The government refused point blank, and the result is therefore it's open to them to do that. But we should have put them in the upper tier because they are a threat. They're a threat to us domestically, and they're a threat to us and our allies internationally. And the sooner we wake up to that, the better it would be. But in fact, the government, I'm afraid, is so desperate for money and investment that they refuse to do any of that. But they're going to have to do it at some point. And there's the embassy too. So,
and some of the schools are presumably desperate as well. The Times actually quotes a former teacher from Harrow, Beijing, which is an interesting title for a school, saying there won't be too much interference aside from adding the Chinese GCSE, introducing table tennis and celebrating Spring Festival, but they'd also be most likely to decline a visit from the Dalai Lama. If it's that level of interference, is that acceptable, do you think? Yeah.
No, that's ridiculous. It's at far deeper level. The Chinese aren't taking these universities over for the sake of a few little things like that. The reality is the students that go through that will inculcate in due course a different sense of China from what many of us like myself perceive as the threat to places like Taiwan and to the way that we live our lives. China is unbelievably influential now, and it's influential because of its money. Russia would not have been able to continue this war in Ukraine, and I'd like to say a couple of words about that if you have time.
Yeah, no, we'll get to that, don't worry.
But they could not have continued this war did they not have China's full support. China has bought their oil, it's provided them with money, it's put them on their banking system once they were chucked out of the international banking system, all of that, and they've avoided sanctions, refused to take them part. They brokered the deal with North Korea, which has now provided them with over 5 million 152 rounds when they were running out a year and a bit ago. So all of this is about supporting Russia, and that's the danger of China right now, is it has an alternative view of the world, and it's at the center of a whole axis, totalitarian states, North Korea, Iran, Russia, China, and there's Myanmar and others that they're supporting in that brutal war.
Well,
so they're a danger to us all.
Well, let's link those two stories even more closely. What do you think Beijing's reaction to what is going to take place today in the White House and took place in Alaska? It looks like the one thing that keeps coming back to us this morning, Iain, is what is Russia being asked to concede in all of this conversation about Ukraine? It seems it's being asked to concede simply that it will keep the land it's taken and stop invading further, where all the concessions are on the other side. Presumably that's a message to China as well.
I think the Anchorage negotiation was one of the worst negotiations that I've seen. It's not a negotiation. It turned into essentially a Putin capitulation by America by President Trump. He went in wanting a ceasefire. He came out giving Russia the idea that they could retain their territory. He'd even talked about trading land for peace, as we discover now, which he said he wouldn't do. All of this is an absolute shameful betrayal. And in fact, we learn that lovely saying that he that forgets the past is destined to live in the past and repeat the mistakes of the past. In essence, that is what we are doing now. We have forgotten what happened in the run to the Second World War. We have completely forgotten that we did exactly the same to the Czechoslovakian Republic when we gave away the Sudetenland, without, by the way, the Czech president even being present. Does that sound a little bit familiar?
Yeah.
And that then led to them taking over Czechoslovakia, moving into Poland, and the rest, of course, is brutal history. We are in the middle of that, and Putin knows this. We are weak. The West has become very weak militarily, but also in moral terms. We have no idea what we stand for. We set up NATO as a bulwark against the dictatorship and the brutality of the totalitarian states of Russia. And the result now is that we've caved in completely. So I don't know what these guarantees are, because the US has gone hot and cold on supplies of military equipment. If I've been to Ukraine many times, I have to tell you, the brutality of the war there is enormous. And if Ukraine had had the weapons 2.5 years ago that they desperately needed, we wouldn't be in this situation. So I wouldn't rely on the West one little bit. It's weak. It has an attention span of a gnat. And I have to tell you, the West, Europe is not ready to support people militarily, and America is blowing hot and cold about whether it thinks that Ukraine is important. It's important because China's watching. China will take over Taiwan if Russia gets its way on Ukraine, because it knows we are weak, and that is essentially what is on the table today.
And that's there's an awful lot of people will be nodding their head in sad agreement with that, I think, Iain, this morning. We'll see what happens. Good to speak to you. Thank you for taking the time.
Thanks.
That's Iain Duncan Smith, the former leader of the Conservative Party. That point we've mentioned a couple of times, Second World War, First World War. If you just have bilateral treaties that say, people don't necessarily believe them. Hitler didn't believe that Britain would come and fight for Poland. The Germans didn't believe we would fight for Belgium in the First World War. Are we in the same sort of situation? And do we actually believe it ourselves? If Russia gets the Donbass area of Ukraine and then decides to take a little bit more, who honestly believes that America or even Europe would stir to the battlefield to stop him?
That's why I find the phrase security guarantee frustrating, because we are not guaranteeing Ukraine's sovereignty or even the stability of its borders, are we? We'll see what comes out of the meeting a little bit later. I mean, John makes the point on WhatsApp. Guarantees for Ukraine, why not give them their nuclear weapons back? We miserably failed to live up to guarantees we gave when Ukraine went non-nuclear. That's the treaty we've been talking about, 1994 in Budapest.
Jenny makes a similar point. Interesting how the weapon that ended World War II has effectively made the world less secure and currently at the mercy of a handful of megalomaniacs failing to support Ukrainian properly to stand up to Putin in 2014 and 2022, largely for fear of nuclear conflict, now means there's no real deterrent for Russia and China's territorial ambitions.